I've been delivering for Uber Eats for about 3 years now, and let me tell you, most nights are pretty routine. You pick up some food, drive across town, drop it off, collect your tip, and move on to the next order. But every once in a while, something happens that makes you question whether the extra $20 is really worth it. Tonight, I'm going to share 3 stories that still give me chills when I think about them. These aren't urban legends or stories I heard from a friend of a friend. These are real experiences that happen to real drivers, and honestly, after hearing them, you might think twice before ordering late-night delivery. The first story comes from a driver named Marcus, who worked the downtown area about 2 years ago. Marcus had been doing deliveries for almost 6 months at that point, so he knew the city pretty well. He knew which neighbourhoods to avoid after dark, which apartment complexes had confusing layouts, and which restaurants always kept drivers waiting. But this particular night was different from anything he'd experienced before. It was a Tuesday evening around 9:30 when Marcus got a ping for a McDonald's order. Nothing unusual about that. The pickup location was normal, the delivery address looked legitimate, and the payout was decent enough to make it worth his time. He grabbed the order without any issues and started driving toward the drop-off location. The address led him to a residential area on the outskirts of downtown, where the houses were older and the streetlights were spaced further apart than he was used to. When Marcus pulled up to the address, he immediately noticed something was off. The house was completely dark. Not just the kind of dark where maybe the family was watching TV in the back room, but pitch black, like nobody had been home for weeks. The yard was overgrown. There were newspapers piled up on the front porch, and one of the shutters was hanging loose and creaking in the wind. Marcus sat in his car for a moment, checking the address on his phone 3 times to make sure he was in the right place. He tried calling the customer, but the phone went straight to voicemail. The voicemail message was just dead silence for about 10 seconds before it cut off. Marcus figured maybe the customer had fallen asleep, or their phone had died, so he decided to walk up to the door and knock. Maybe they were just in a back room and couldn't hear their phone. As he got closer to the house, he noticed that the front door was slightly open, just a crack, but enough that he could see it wasn't properly closed. Marcus knocked on the doorframe and called out that he had their food delivery. No response. He knocked again, a little louder this time, and the door creaked open a few more inches from the vibration. That's when he smelled it. This horrible, overwhelming stench that hit him like a wall. It wasn't just the smell of old garbage or a backed-up sewer. This was something else entirely, something that made his stomach turn and his eyes water immediately. Every instinct Marcus had was telling him to get back in his car and leave. But he was still thinking like a delivery driver, trying to complete his job. He called out one more time, asking if anyone was home, and that's when he heard it. From somewhere inside the dark house came this low, guttural sound. Not quite human, but not quite animal either. It was like someone trying to speak, but their voice was completely destroyed. Just this raspy, choking noise that seemed to go on forever. Marcus didn't wait around to figure out what was making that sound. He dropped the food on the porch, ran back to his car, and drove away as fast as he could. When he got to a safe distance, he called Uber support to report what had happened, but they just told him to mark the delivery as completed and move on to his next order. Marcus never found out what was in that house, and honestly, he didn't want to know, but that was just the beginning. The second story happened to a driver named Sarah, and it's the reason she only takes orders during daylight hours now. Sarah had been driving for Uber Eats for about 8 months when this incident occurred. She was working a Friday night shift, which was usually her most profitable time of the week. College kids ordering pizza, families getting takeout for movie night. The usual crowd that kept her busy until well past midnight. Around 11:15, Sarah got an order from a Thai restaurant she'd picked up from dozens of times before. The order was going to an apartment complex about 15 minutes away. She'd delivered to this complex before too, though not very often since it was in a part of town that didn't order delivery very frequently. The payout was higher than usual, which should have been her first red flag, but Sarah was having a slow night and needed the money. She picked up the order without any problems, 2 entrees, some spring rolls, and a Thai iced tea. The restaurant staff seemed normal, the food was ready on time, and everything appeared to be exactly what she expected. Sarah loaded everything into her insulated bag and started driving toward the delivery address. The apartment complex was one of those older buildings from the 70s with exterior staircases and long outdoor corridors that connected all the units. When Sarah arrived, she checked the apartment number on her phone, Unit 214. She climbed the stairs to the second floor and started walking down the corridor, looking for the right door. The hallway was dimly lit, with about half the light fixtures either burned out or flickering. As she got closer to apartment 214, she noticed that the door was standing wide open. Not just unlocked, but completely open, like someone had been expecting her and wanted to make the delivery as easy as possible. Sarah called out hello, but there was no response. She stepped closer to the doorway and peered inside. The apartment was completely empty. No furniture, no decorations, no signs that anyone had ever lived there. The carpet looked like it hadn't been cleaned in years, and there were these strange dark stains scattered across the floor that Sarah couldn't quite make out in the dim light. The smell coming from inside was musty and stale, like the place had been sealed up for months. She tried calling the customer, but just like Marcus's experience, the phone went straight to voicemail. This time, though, the voicemail was even more unsettling. Instead of silence, there was this recording of someone breathing heavily, almost panting, for about 20 seconds before the line went dead. Sarah stood there holding her phone, trying to figure out what she was supposed to do with an order for an apartment that was clearly vacant. The second story takes us to a driver named Sarah, and it's exactly why she refuses to take orders after dark anymore. Sarah had been delivering for about 8 months when this happened, working her usual Friday night shift. Friday nights were always her best earning opportunity, so when she got a ping for a Thai restaurant order with an unusually high payout, she didn't hesitate to accept it. The pickup went smoothly. 2 entrees, spring rolls, and a Thai iced tea from a restaurant she knew well. Nothing seemed out of the ordinary until she arrived at the delivery address, an older apartment complex from the 70s with exterior staircases and long outdoor corridors. She was looking for Unit 214, and when she found it, the door was standing wide open. Sarah called out, but got no response. When she looked inside, the apartment was completely empty. No furniture, no belongings, nothing. Just dirty carpet with dark stains scattered across the floor, and a musty smell that made her want to gag. She tried calling the customer, and this time the voicemail was even worse than Marcus had experienced. Instead of silence, there was heavy breathing, almost panting, for 20 seconds before the line cut off. That's when Sarah heard footsteps coming from inside the empty apartment. Slow, deliberate steps moving from the back of the unit toward where she was standing. She couldn't see anyone, but the footsteps kept getting closer. Sarah dropped the food and ran down the corridor, taking the stairs 2 at a time. As she reached her car, she looked back and saw a figure standing in the doorway of Unit 214, just watching her. The third and final story comes from a driver named Kevin, and it's the reason I'm seriously considering finding a different line of work. Kevin was doing a late-night delivery to a house in the suburbs, one of those cookie-cutter neighbourhoods where all the houses look identical. When he arrived, everything seemed normal at first. The porch light was on, the house looked well-maintained, and there was even a car in the driveway. Kevin walked up to the front door and knocked. A woman answered almost immediately, which was unusual since most customers take at least a few seconds to get to the door. She was probably in her 40s, wearing a nightgown, and she had this strange smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. She thanked Kevin for the delivery and handed him a $20 bill as a tip, which was generous for the order size. As Kevin was walking back to his car, he heard the woman call out behind him. She asked if he wanted to come inside for a drink, maybe some coffee or something stronger. Kevin politely declined, saying he had more deliveries to make. That's when the woman's demeanour completely changed. Her smile disappeared, and she asked again, this time more insistently. When Kevin said no again and kept walking toward his car, she started following him. The woman began talking faster and faster, asking Kevin personal questions about where he lived, whether he was married, if anyone knew where he was that night. Kevin quickened his pace, but the woman matched it, staying right behind him. When he reached his car and opened the driver's side door, the woman grabbed his arm. Her grip was surprisingly strong, and her fingernails dug into his skin hard enough to leave marks. Kevin pulled free and jumped into his car, locking the doors immediately. As he started the engine, he looked in his rearview mirror and saw the woman standing in the middle of the street, still staring at him with that unsettling smile back on her face. But here's the part that really freaked Kevin out. When he got home that night and checked his delivery history, there was no record of that order. No pickup location, no customer name, no payment processed. It was like the entire delivery had never happened, except for the $20 bill in his pocket and the scratches on his arm. These three stories share something in common that goes beyond just being creepy or unsettling. In each case, the drivers found themselves in situations that felt wrong from the moment they arrived, but they pushed forward anyway because they were trying to do their job. Marcus smelled something terrible and heard inhuman sounds, but he still tried to complete the delivery. Sarah found an empty apartment with an open door, but she didn't leave until she heard those footsteps. Kevin felt uncomfortable with the customer's behaviour, but he stayed polite until she physically grabbed him. So here's what really bothers me about these stories. These drivers trusted their instincts, but not quickly enough. Those three stories represent something that every delivery driver fears, but rarely talks about. We put ourselves in vulnerable situations every single night, going to strangers' homes, often alone, usually carrying cash. Most of the time, everything works out fine, but sometimes you encounter something that reminds you just how dangerous this job can really be. If you're thinking about becoming a delivery driver, trust your instincts. If something feels wrong, it probably is.